Welcome to today's Walking in Wisdom. I know it's a challenge to grow wiser. It means leaving behind things that are immature, things that are foolish, things that we may enjoy, ways of thinking that suited us when we were lower down on the ladder of perfection. But now God is asking us to grow up, to rise up, to be like the apostles as they ascended into the upper room with Jesus. And when they got there, they found that there were still things within them that required attendance, that required adjustment and change. And the upper room, we think of it as being this great feast with Jesus and him bringing some lovely thoughts our way as we have our last meal with him before he goes to the Garden of Gethsemane. But it was tough. It was hard discussion. Jesus challenging the way that they looked at themselves, fighting over who would be the greatest. It was a challenging time. And as we ascend the ladder of perfection, going higher into the presence of God, so these are challenging times. I know yesterday's message, when I spoke about submission in the house of God, that challenges a lot of people because we're okay in submitting to God, submitting in a vertical manner. We're not so okay when it comes to submitting to one another, and yet the Bible is consistent in its expectation of us in that arena. So expect more challenges to come. Here we are in Psalm 123, step 4 in the ladder of perfection. Jesus said, "Be perfect even as your Father in heaven is perfect." That's a challenging word. It wasn't a suggestion. It was a command. It was even a demand. How can God demand something that we can't possibly deliver? Whatever God is expecting becomes available through grace. Christ achieved this for us, not so we wouldn't have to attain it, but so that we could attain it. So here we are, verses 1 and 2 of Psalm 123, and it says, "I lift up my eyes to you whose throne is in heaven. As the eyes of a servant look to the hand of their master, as the eyes of a maid look to the hand of her mistress, so our eyes look to the Lord our God till he shows us mercy." We're talking about how we can fulfill Christ's expectation for our perfection. And the way that we fulfill that is by lifting our gaze. Lift up your eyes. This is not the first time that we've encountered that phrase in this ladder of perfection. Step 2 also told us to lift our eyes. However, step 2 said, lift our eyes up to the hills. By the time we get to step 4, we're to look higher. Now we're asked to lift our eyes to heaven. There is progression in our ability to see. Before, we only had strength to lift our eyes to the hills. Now we can look into heaven. When we were first commencing our Christian walk, we looked to some man on a hill like Calvary. And as we progress, our dependency shifts from Calvary to heaven. Jesus is now in heaven, standing at the right hand of the Father. Every advancement in our lives brings about a corresponding change in our nature. It's through such change that we become perfected, even as our Father in heaven is perfect. The changes may seem incremental, even obscure. You may not realize you've changed until one day you find yourself looking higher than you ever did before. No longer relying upon man to meet your need, now you look to God and God alone. You've grown. You've changed from one level of glory to another. And once you reach this stage, you've come to the place of being one of God's servants in the house of the Lord. It might look like you're serving a man, but you know you're serving God. Not serving because you feel like a worm, but serving because you're looking to Jesus. It says, as the eyes of a servant look to the hand of their master. You're looking in order to please God. You're not a man pleaser, you're a servant of God. Just like Moses was a servant of God. The greatest need that we have is not knowing doctrine. It's not trying to look at the signs of the times and figure out just when Jesus is coming back. It's not even prayer or being holy. The greatest need is to keep our eyes on the Master. Your main battle will not be against sin or even circumstances, but against being so absorbed in a multitude of cares and concerns that distract you from being focused upon Jesus. The only way that a servant can be true to God is to be ready for the Lord's hand to give direction at every single minute. The readiness is not brought about by service. A lot of our service may in fact turn our attention away from Jesus. How about that? We're trying to do something for Jesus, and in the process of trying to do something for Jesus, to be a great man of God or a great woman of God, we end up turning our eyes away from Jesus, thinking that this work or that duty or this attendance has to be looked upon and fix our involvement with. And so this is often the cause why we get involved with so many things and then cry out to God to bless what it is that we're doing, when instead if we could just look upon what God is doing and get involved with that, God's blessing is already surrounding what he is doing. So readiness is really brought about by intense spiritual reality. The necessary thing for all of us at this stage is to stop being so religious and doing what we think that we should be doing and setting our eyes on Jesus. Trust no one who tries to lower your gaze. Even if they're the most spiritual person on earth, if they block your sight of Jesus, then ignore them and turn your eyes upon Jesus. Don't be so concerned with what all of these prophets have got to say. You turn your eyes upon Jesus, because you have to do what Jesus wants you to do, not what some prophet over in America or in Africa or in Europe wants you to do. You have to be concerned with what Jesus wants you to do, what he wants you to do. Well, this is a hard lesson for us to learn, because we are so accustomed to getting our direction from second-hand knowledge, from second-hand involvement. But train your eyes, turn your eyes. It's to you that Jesus directs his requests. Yeah, he doesn't leave you out. He's got something for you to do, for every single one of you, and for me. We'll see you again tomorrow, where we'll have more wisdom from God. We're going higher every day, higher and higher and higher. See you tomorrow.